Qui è ora. Qui è dove conoscere significa confrontarsi con le sfide della contemporaneità, ascoltare le nuove generazioni da accogliere nel tempo presente. Ora, Università Cattolica del Sacro Cuore. Visita il sito unicat.it.
E allora si è voltato improvvisamente alla gente che era lì e ha detto: la gente che cosa dice che io sia? Chi dice che io sia? E voi chi dite che io sia?
Qui è ora. Qui è dove conoscere significa confrontarsi con le sfide della contemporaneità, ascoltare le nuove generazioni da accogliere nel tempo presente. Ora, Università Cattolica del Sacro Cuore. Visita il sito unicat.it.
Allora si è voltato improvvisamente alla gente che era lì e ha detto: la gente che cosa dice che io sia? Chi dice che io sia? E voi chi dite che io sia?
Civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Buongiorno a tutti.
Good morning, everyone. Jérôme Lejeune, the freedom of pursuing good. 30 years after the death of Professor Lejeune, we are here with some distinguished guests that I am about to introduce. Aude Dugast, Director of the Bioethic Department of the Foundation Lejeune.
Postulatrice
And postulator of the beatification cause of Jérôme Lejeune. Professor Zampino, Director of the Pediatric Department of the Policlinico Gemelli in Rome, Head of Rare Disease and Congenital Defects at Fondazione Gemelli in Rome. And Dr. Angelo Carfì, an astronomer and a specialist in medicine for elderly people, responsible for the adult service for Down syndrome in the Policlinico Gemelli in Rome. This is a meeting that is the result of a friendship, the friendship of the Rimini meeting with Lejeune. Lejeune was here in 1985 and again in 1990, where he gave 2 wonderful lectures. This friendship went on with his daughter, his wife, and so this friendship has been very important for so many of us. from the human as well as professional point of view. And there is a friendship also with these two colleagues that was extremely important from the medical, professional, and human point of view. So I'm really honored to be here. And I'd like to say something to explain why I'm the moderator of this meeting. In 2011, I was in New York. I spent a few years there with my family. And I worked at the Columbia University in New York. Dr. Paravicini took me to this meeting in New York. It is an annual meeting held in the United States called New York Encounter. And that's where I met Chiara, Lejeune's daughter, who was talking about her father. I didn't know Lejeune. I wasn't familiar with his life. And I was really fascinated by Lejeune as a man, as a professional, but also for the humble life that he led. When I came back to Italy, the Rimini meeting had organized an exhibition that, after the Rimini meeting with some friends, we hosted this same exhibition at the Sant'Orsola hospital in Bologna. There I met Professor Stripoli. Many among you know him, who had started new research paths on the Down syndrome, especially with reference to the intellectual deficits of these patients. He's a genetist, but he needed someone that could deal with the clinical part of this research. I'm a neonatologist, and there was another project initiated by Professor Cocchi, who followed babies with Down syndrome. So I decided to take part in this research work, and that marked the beginning of a great human and professional adventure. So I started working in this clinic with Professor Cocchi, and then when he retired, I became responsible for this center. And I must say that this really enlarged my skills, my knowledge, my know-how, but also my human resource. They called me the heiress because of the greatness of the center that I have in a way inherited. So just to say how much Lejeune has marked the life of so many among us. And I'll show you a slide. This is the team, the initial team. You see Professor Cocchi, Professor Stripoli, who's carrying out a very important research work and has also already tabled some hypothetical theories that will then have to be assessed. So a lot of younger doctors who devoted their lives to these patients, this center became bigger and bigger.
Ma iniziamo a raccontare chi...
So let's start speaking about the life of Jérôme Lejeune. I'll ask Aude to talk about him, about what he did for the history of medicine, and he wrote a book on Aude wrote a book on Lejeune. It has just been translated into Italian. It's a beautiful biography where you find a lot of information about his life. So please, Aude. Thank you. Chiara really does a very great job with these babies and children, and also to Professor Stripoli, who works with there. It's not easy to say who Jérôme Lejeune was in 10 minutes, because he is someone that is at the center of my work. It has been at the center of my work for 10 years. Every time I read one of his texts, or when I hear parents talking about him, I'm really moved to tears. He was a beautiful person. His life is like a novel that takes us to know children with trisomy 21. They were called children with Down syndrome. But we have other important characters, John Kennedy, Leonid Brezhnev, Mother Teresa. So this whole life looks like a novel, but everything is true. He really had a remarkable life. He came here in Rimini. First of all, I'd like to apologize for my terrible French accent.
Allora Lejeune, diciamo che
Jérôme Lejeune is the father of modern genetics. He discovered trisomy 21 in 1958. He discovered this extra chromosome, analyzing a baby with the Down syndrome, as it was called at the time. And this was, in a way, a revolution for patients, for parents. I don't know if among you, in the audience, we have families that have children with trisomy 21, but this was a real revolution, because before that, this disease was seen as some kind of misfortune, some kind of punishment that God was sending to the family because of sins committed in the past. So actually it was a double tragedy, because on the one hand there was this disease and no one knew how to treat it, and there was also the judgment of the society. When Lejeune discovered the origins of this disease, everything changed, because, well, it was then clear that there was a genetic cause. And finally, there was a scientist, a researcher, who was taking the side of the parents in order to help them live with this disease. I could talk about this for hours and hours, because I have collected so many testimonies on these. All the parents say the same things. This is really strange. Everyone says that it was a before and after meeting Jérôme Lejeune. So we arrived with a burden on our shoulders. We didn't know what to do. It was very difficult. Our life was difficult, but then he gave us strength. He gave us hope. He loved our children. He looked at them with love. I have never seen anyone that looked at my son with so much love. So this is what parents tell me. And this look of love gave parents hope and strength. It was a revolution in genetics, because it was the first chromosome disease that was discovered. It was the beginning of cytogenetics. And with Jerome, genetics became an independent discipline, so which was no longer just an element of pediatrics. And he was the first professor of fundamental genetics at the University in Paris in 1964. At the same time, another course on fundamental genetics was created in the Columbia university in the United States. Jerome was invited to New York and told him that they had created this university course because we want you to be the president, the director of this department. But he said no, he wanted to stay in France. So this was really the beginning of this new genetics in the world. Jerome was invited everywhere. He was really the reference point in the world of genetics. He was awarded so many prizes, the Kennedy Prize. He didn't win the Nobel Prize because of his commitment to defend human life, but we will be talking about this later on. He was a member of almost all the academies, scientific academies in the world. But there is also something more, otherwise I wouldn't be here to talk about him today. But he was also a master in Hippocrates' medicine. In the years 1968, 69, and then from 1975, a law against human life was drafted, the law on abortion, and then euthanasia was also approved. So it's in a way almost the same thing at the beginning of life with the abortion and at the end of life. And he defended his patients. He knew that a doctor had took an oath to safeguard the lives of his patients. So he said no. He said that medicine should serve the patient always. This looks like something that is obvious, but it's not that obvious nowadays. And obviously, he wasn't afraid of science. Now, patients and parents have a choice thanks to these laws. Jérôme Lejeune said, science without conscience is what I fear. We don't have to fear science. And, well, Lejeune is an inspiration for so many young doctors because he makes us put the good of our patients at the center of our work. So this should be also at the center of our national health policies. And so science, knowledge is put to the service of the patient while respecting God's law. Many believe that to improve and develop science, we have to disobey the law of God. But this is not true, as Jérôme Lejeune demonstrated. In order to develop, to improve science, we need to follow our intelligence, which is linked to life. So we have to follow the will of God. God loves every single person and every single patient. So if we go beyond the natural law, we do not help our patients. Moreover, Lejeune has always defended strongly his patients like a real hero. He used to say he really was very good at communicating, and he said chromosome racism is horrible, like any other form of racism. So if to make a choice between children or babies that have a chromosome 21 or a chromosome 22, so it's a form of racism. So, well, I cannot talk about the whole of his life and how he really defended human life at the highest level. And then he received the Memorial World Award in San Francisco in 1969. He was the best genetist of the world. He delivered an incredible speech, and the title was "To Kill or Not to Kill." So we were in the year 1969, and since genetists were talking about a selection of babies before they were born, Lejeune said we need to reflect upon the goal of medicine, the vocation of doctors, because if we want to kill ill babies, we are no longer doctors. We are not there to kill those who are ill. We are here to help them, to treat them. So this speech was some kind of bomb. It was received with complete silence. No one applauded, and that's when he lost the Nobel Prize, actually. But when he came back to Paris, he wrote in his diary, "I knew that by saying those words I was losing my chance to win the Nobel Prize, but between losing the Nobel Prize and losing a baby affected by trisomy 21, well, the choice is really easy." So he becomes the greatest server of life in the world. He was at the Papal Academy of Science. Pope John Paul II in 1981 met him, and a friendship, a beautiful, strong friendship was born that day. They both love human life strongly. They believe in the beauty of life. They love to contemplate the world as a creation of God. They have the same kind of humor. So, well, the Pope trusted him and asked him to found the Pontificia Accademia per la Vita. So that's what he did. He prepared the whole charter that is at the basis of this academy, and then he died just a few days after the foundation of this academy. And when John Paul II came to France for the youth, the day dedicated to youth, he went to pray on Lejeune's tomb. They were actually having lunch together the day that the Pope was attacked in Rome. Many asked for his beatification when he died. John Paul II wrote a beautiful letter to the Cardinal of Paris that shows all his admiration, where he says that Jérôme Lejeune is an example for every one of us. So as you see, it's a very rich life. So I really had to summarize this life here.
Come dicevamo all'inizio,
So as we said at the beginning, Jérôme Lejeune participated in the Rimini meeting, and we would like to show you a short excerpt of this lecture he held in 1990. As the tools used for diagnosis of babies who are still in the womb of their mothers are increasingly sophisticated, not only can we detect already present malformations or anomalies or chemical issues, but we can also detect possible predispositions. So trends. We can identify trends to the development of certain diseases that will develop very late in life. In the fetus, one can already detect the gene of the Huntington disease. That will probably lead people to develop dementia around their 40s, in their 40s. Or the first onset of the Alzheimer's disease that will then lead to dementia in between the age of 50 and 60. So should this force us to eliminate the patients who bear these diseases? My clear answer is no. Clearly, these diseases are very expensive in terms of suffering for the patients and their families, in terms of social burden for the community who have to replace the parents. Sometimes the burden to bear is unbearable. However, this effort in terms of money or sacrifice is very limited. We know it well. This is the price that society needs to pay if that society wants to remain truly human. In your book, you write that Jérôme Lejeune is delicate, is unified, meaning that you cannot distinguish where the scientist ends and where the individual begins. This is something that has always struck me a lot. This is what I would like to become as a scientist, as an individual. I think this is a very important aspect of Jérôme Lejeune's life. The beautiful thing I learned when I studied his life is that I am very much interested in Jérôme Lejeune as an individual. There are fantastic saints, but they appear to be very far away from me. They don't have a lot to share with me in their personal life. Jérôme Lejeune is a layperson. He's a scientist. He had children. He used to work in Paris. He would bike on the streets of Paris. So, I mean, he had a very normal life and died 30 years ago, which is not that long ago for us. I know his children, his wife very well. In other words, he was an ordinary man, one of us. And then I had the fortune to be able to read all his letters, also the ones he wrote to his fiancée. They would write to each other every day, and then they would write to each other every day. So there's 2,000 letters exchanged between the two, and they have given us lots of indications. When he was not yet married, he told his fiancée that he was weak, and that his fiancée's love was actually the element giving him strength. The people who met him don't believe this. They always believed that he was very strong. He was as strong as a rock and would give everybody hope. How did he become so solid and so strong? I think that it was precisely this combination, this deep combination between the heart and the mind that gave him such a strength. When we look at his life, we see that his academic excellence and the heroic exercise of Christian virtues grow each other and help each other grow mutually in a dynamics that is at the service of the others and that is free at the same time. In other words, he's not a saint on one hand and a scientist on the other. He's all of this together. He's a great doctor, a great scientist, because he was a great Christian. And he was a great Christian because he lived his work in the best way possible with the whole of his genius and competences, and always oriented towards love. We cannot understand Jérôme Lejeune if we do not see that basically the very important element of his life was blessing, was mercy. In other words, he would actually cater for his patient and love them. He would feel total and unconditional love for his patients. And this even led him to lose a lot in his career, but that did not matter for him. What mattered for him was his patients. So his love was very realistic. He was very much embodied. In the last years of his life, he wrote to an American friend of his who was a lawyer, and with whom he tried to defend some embryos, and the judges did not know what to do because one parent wanted to keep them and the other parent wanted to destroy them. In the end, the embryos were destroyed, but every year Jerome would think of these embryos every year. That was a real physical suffering, as if they were his children, as if every child dying from any abortion, from any abortion, was a real suffering for him. So he was speaking with his heart, but his intelligence was very much attached to reality. So his heart would tell him that you cannot kill, and actually his intelligence would also tell him that killing somebody goes against what medicine always said. So basically the two, medicine and the soul, actually would be on a pair. They would go hand in hand. He lost a lot for this. He lost research funds. But he gave the world the possibility of opening up new forms, and he's become one of the most important individuals who served life in the world. He also had the ability of always using the right word. There are children, his patients, whose intelligence were wounded. And another way of actually wounding intelligence is basically having a kind of intelligence that doesn't tell the truth. So Jérôme Lejeune would always tell the truth. An intelligence that doesn't see the truth, that doesn't identify the truth, prevents our heart to love, and that's very, very strong. So you have charity, the charity of the right word, which is not the easiest of all. It's easier to give a glass of water to a poor person than to, so to say, utter the truth on TV vis-a-vis members of parliament or your friends, or, for example, because you are a doctor and a scientist, and you know that if you're going to tell the truth, you're bound to lose a lot of resources, economic resources. This has led to plenty of conversions among scientists and doctors. What was Jérôme Lejeune's compass? Why was he so brave? Ever since the beginning of his life, he had chosen his compass, and his compass was basically always came at the end of his conferences, and there was Jesus' words, what you will do to one of my youngest brothers, you have done it to me.
Per chiudere questo
I would like to close this introduction by Aude. You mentioned the letters that Jerome wrote to his wife. I'd like to read an excerpt of one of these letters that shows the shared ideals in their family. And at a given stage, he says that he was offered a job on some children and tells his wife, this is a very challenging objective. It will it will be very demanding in terms of sacrifices, but if you are willing to accept a right and healthy life, but a precarious one, based on that hope, I'm sure that we will make it. And I'm using the we because only if you accompany me and you help me, I will manage to do something, will succeed in something. So, Professor Giuseppe Zampino, you are a good friend of mine, and you've been dealing with the treatment of these frail children. Professor Zampino works in this pediatrics outpatient clinic, treating very weak patients affected by trisomy 21, as well as other patients, young patients with rare genetic diseases. What does it mean to be so frail? Well, I've prepared some slides, and I'd kind of like to ask for these slides to be projected. So, frailty. If I were to project frailty, I would rather use the image of Achilles, the big soldier, the major soldier who by himself could kill the whole Trojan army. And that was frail because there was a point of pain, a point of death, and that would turn Achilles into a man. As Simone Weil said, fragility is in the flesh and soul of man, and one of the elements of frailty is frailty is the limes, the limit. So you have limes and limen. Limes means barrier, perimeter, while limen means beginning, and that's the beginning of the ocean, while the other limes is the delimitation of the island. So we always think that the limit is something negative, but in fact, and we think that the beginning is something positive. But this is not the case. We are what we are because we have limits. You recognize myself because I have certain limits, and not the ones by Angelo, the limits of Angelo Carfì. We are as we are because we have a perimeter, a physical perimeter, a psychological perimeter. We are like that because we are precisely as we are. The issue is that we are increasingly told that we need to be perfect. We have to be constantly perfect. And yet, the most important thing is to accept our limits. If we manage to start from this, then I think we can start many other things surrounding us in humanity. So the limit as a barrier is not necessarily something negative. If I were to analyze a barrier and what determines a disability, I would like to use the International Classification of Disability to show you what disability means. Disability means an alteration of one's functioning because of a structural anomaly. For example, a person lacks a finger or an arm, or because the fact that there is no the possibility of having the arm and the finger go together. This brings about a limitation in capacities and performance. This means that I may, for example, have 3 fingers only and cannot play the piano, or I may be very, very good at playing the piano. So very skilled. However, if I am in a very peculiar context, I'm so moved, so touched that I cannot play anything. So even if I have the capacity, I don't have the performance to do what I have to do. So at this stage, if we analyze our life, I think we are all of us are disabled. And if we accept that we are all disabled and limited and with limits, I think that it is also important to accept disability in general. And of course, we also need contextual factors that they can become barriers or facilitators. And one of the most important aspects that basically discriminates between a facilitator or a barrier are behavior. So the ability of welcoming a given defect or a given disability. If I were to analyze what limen means, Limen means beginning, threshold, entry. And what does this mean? It means ultimately responsibility. When a child is born, I mean, there you have the beginning, you have the wailing of the newborn. And that's a paradigm of love and tenderness, but above all, it is synonymous with responsibility. If I do not cater for that child is about to die. This is a sentence by Lejeune. Today, we are much more powerful than ever, but we're not wiser. This is particularly important because, as Lejeune used to say, as mankind progresses and increases its knowledge, we become more powerful. Now we have man that is more powerful than the world and not the other way around. So we have to be humble enough to recognize our power so as to be careful. Otherwise, we will end up destroying our essence. So beyond intelligence, there's another law of life that governs also reason. That's the affection for our neighbor, the protection of the undefended, the compassion for those who suffer, and the limitless respect also towards those who are far away, foreigner, diverse, different, and also for those who will follow us on this earth. This is particularly important because it gives us the sense of reciprocity in our relationship. There must be reciprocity. I mean, I have a right and a duty towards you and the other way around. This issue of reciprocity, however, posed a problem because I no longer have responsibilities for those who are born in 2100. So I will have to be very careful. I will give the whole of my love to my son, my grandson, and I will try and basically take the most out of the earth's resources to give prosperity and wealth to my son and grandson, so that the children and the grandchildren of my children will receive nothing. So this means that we have to be responsible. For a pediatrician, this is quite obvious because it consists with having a child be born and grown up. Compassion for parents is a feeling that every physician must have. The man who could announce to parents that their child is suffering from a serious illness and who did not feel his heart deeply moved at the thought of the pain that is about to overwhelm them, well, this man would not be worthy of our profession. This introduces the topic of communicating a diagnosis. When the newborn is born with a congenital defect, that's one of the most difficult talk to hold with parents. There are two moments of difficulties. The doctor has to say something that he wouldn't like to say. And then the parents have to recognize that that child is their child. Actually, they've dreamt of a wonderful and healthy child for 9 months, and yet they have to recognize that the newborn does not match their fantasy. So there is a real difficulty, and there are various problems to face, and the doctor here has to use difficult words. And words that one doesn't think that can be used in medicine. They may be, for example, I don't know, maybe, or I've made a mistake. And then when you communicate something, you also have to take several components into account, the emotional ones, the cognitive ones, and the organizational components of a given family. So the first question that the mother poses is, however, why? And the doctor's answer is very simple. If I were a child with these malformations, that's because there's a mutation of the FGFR genes. This is genetics. So this is genetics that basically gives an answer to etiology. But when the mother asks this question, why was Luca born in this family? And the mother basically poses a question which relates to the aim and the sense. As Wittgenstein said, we feel that even under the assumption that all possible scientific questions have been answered, our vital problems are still not even touched upon. And then there's another important fact that that contributes to increase the sense of blame of a mother. A genetic defect might be perceived as a defect of creation. The Psalm says that God knows you ever since the generation. The same is said by the Quran. Ill-formed. That means that there was an error of creation, but God doesn't make any mistake, and therefore you are tempted towards feeling blame. That means that you might have made a mistake. This is actually what John used to say. But fact is that what we always think of is that we are only in the central part of the Gaussian curve. We are the right because we are between +2 and -2 standard deviations. And what's towards the extremes has to be eliminated. And yet what goes beyond the Gaussian, if it weren't there, we wouldn't have been there, because the first amphibian was an ill-formed amphibian. The first man was an ill-formed monkey. So thanks to this evolution, thanks to the perseverance of its mistakes, nature has given us the possibility of having a life. And as Vito Mancuso rightly points out, it is not true that exceptions confirm the rule and that they destroy any rule, but rather it is true that the rule is done by everything that takes place, by what's normal and what's exceptional. This is a comment by Aude in the book. He's just a doctor, he's not God. It's not him who saves or prolongs life, but rather he serves life. As Aude said before, in genetics, we have something different compared to other areas, other fields of medicine. In the other fields, we have a medicine, and then you have the patient that has to be solved. So the patient is the absolute good, and the condition is the absolute evil. When you have a newborn affected by Down syndrome, that's the same. So that's why we do not talk about pathology, a disease, but rather we talk about a condition. The impossibility to heal shouldn't make the importance of the treatment not considered. So treatment is a therapy. Therapy from the Greek means service, respect, cure, adoration, worshipping, and the corresponding verb means to be at the service of, to respect, to honor, to worship. Plato would use the word therapist only for gods and parents. That is to say, the two categories of individuals who give you life. So the therapist is what takes care of the life of the other, that gives importance to it. Life is not something fetish that we need to keep. Life is something that you have to attach importance to. And the doctor's role is to say, this life is important for me. Otherwise, one does not understand why there are children who come from abroad with for example, with conditions that they cannot be treated, and they come from Sicily to Rome just to have a doctor tell them that's a wonderful life, that life is meaningful. And of course, this is very clear in this sentence uttered by a woman. There are lots of needs my son has, and even if somebody thinks that his life is useless, and even if somebody says that his life is a life of that has no meaning, that's still the life of that's my son's life. They call it vegetation, but for me it's my son's life. We do not live the space, but we live time. We inhabit time. We basically, when we are born, we're completely independent, and we become autonomous, and then at the end of our life, we become dependent again. Others don't reach that stage. Some don't reach the stage, others reach it in a better or worse condition. So it is necessary, it is fundamental that a community has the ability to welcome somebody that was not independent but then becomes autonomous, and then eventually become dependent again. So these children live a life that does not evolve. It always stays the same. And metaphorically, they already live eternity in their own life. So it is us who have to show if that eternity is a hell or a heaven based on the attention that we can give them.
La qualità di una civiltà.
The quality of civilization is measured by the respect it shows towards its weakest members. All the love, all the dedication, all the money that will be spent to protect the maimed and helpless is the price and the right price that a society must pay to remain human. You said that before. Yes, that's true. It is precisely the community that has to express solidarity. Let's talk about sustainability. Sustainability is a point of balance between advantages and disadvantages. When a child is born with congenital defects, the family has to bear direct costs, so economic costs, but also indirect costs. The indirect costs are the tangible ones. If you have a baby born with trisomy 18, well, actually his mother will lose his job because she will have to cater for him. His siblings will become orphans. His father will have to renounce his career. And he will also have to renounce lots of opportunities. Both families will have to renounce lots of opportunities. And besides the indirect costs, then we also have the intangible costs, so psycho-emotional costs and social costs. Most of these children are isolated, socially isolated. The families of these children are isolated. So even going shopping for a family with this kind of problems becomes difficult. If you ask a family what happened if they've ever gone to the cinema or to the theater, they will tell you that everything is over. So if these are the disadvantages, what are the advantages? What is it that balances this condition of disadvantage? How can we achieve? How do we achieve sustainability here? As a matter of fact, there is not just one assessment that can be made, but the focus should be on the strength of the families. The strength of the family has to be sought in the effective field between family members, in the desire to overcome this personal feeling of impotence, in the personal religious feeling, and also in the desire to be propositional. And the most important thing is that that child is your child. And so you have all this distinction, abortion or no abortion. Actually, human life starts from conception. There is no doubt on that. And when does a relationship start? Actually, that begins when you feel that that is your child. If I say that Ali Bouré is in Burkina Faso, is dying, is starving, well, we're not that interested. But if he were in front of us, asking us for food, nobody would be able to say that that's not of interest, that we're not interested in that. So what can we do to help a family and a child with such a disability? We can be present. There are studies showing that the satisfaction towards a better social network is the one that improves the life of a person with disability and his family. And the well-being, the biggest problem of the family has to deal with social isolation. We talk about social well-being, but fact is that medicine increasingly talks about social capital. That's a term taken from economics. It means that a community can express solidarity. And studies have shown that the more solidarity is expressed, the better that community is capable of being more emphatic, and less possibilities it has to suffer from tumors, depression and anxiety, and heart and cardiovascular diseases. If you have a welcoming community vis-a-vis the migrants, where migrants are someone to welcome, is a community that does good to his neighbor and to themselves as well.
Ho quasi vergogna della...
I'm really ashamed of the small celebrity that basically is shown around the discovery that does not lead us to any cure. We have to do something. So Jérôme Lejeune has always tried to find a therapy. Therapy is a hope. It gives the possibility to attack the disease to defend the patient, and that was the only opportunity to, in a way, to oppose to abortion. He realized that that idea was not so correct, because research does not meet the need to hope. Research and science give us an expectation. However, the technical or scientific time we wait can reduce the meaning of the time of the disease. In other words, if I am born with Down syndrome and I live whole of my existence hoping that there's someone that finds a drug that makes me feel normal, well, actually, I haven't lived my existence for what I am. That was Luca with the Down syndrome. So, hope is not waiting for a research result to come, but rather it is being a trustworthy, reliable human relationship that can contain solitude and suffering. So hope is a reliable presence, and Jerome was such a presence for all his patients. He was the hope for everybody.
Appunto, la speranza per Jerome è una virtù
So hope for Jerome is a concrete virtue. It also manifests in the way he looks at the sick and the conviction that their lives has value. This ability is to pity, to console day after day, lifts them up and manifests in our disposition before the cross. He knows that behind the scandal of suffering there is a path of hope.
Grazie, Giuseppe.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Angelo. He's a great friend of the meeting and of the New York encounter, where he told a different story. John Paul II, during the speech on the beatification of Lejeune, said Professor Lejeune always used his deep knowledge of life and its secrets for the good of man and humanity and mankind, and the dedication of Lejeune and the positions he took was the result of the good that he was looking for his patients. And this was at the basis of the work that he carried out with his staff. So this dedication to patients can create places of research and treatment for those who are the poorest, as Lejeune calls them, according to your experience. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Dedication to patients. Well, this is something that has been already said many times. It was Lejeune's main characteristic. So if I have to say what is the first peculiarity, the first characteristic that I look for in a colleague is the dedication to patients, because from this dedication comes research that for us, common people who studied things before actually doing something, treating the patient, which doesn't mean that we always look inside the microscope. So this is where the treatment comes from. And so if you actually connect with the patient in front of you, then you will study for this patient. You will give this patient something which is the best that you have at the moment. And the moment of treatment will not be simply take this pharmaceutical products and then we won't see each other again. But what really is important from my point of view is that we need to go beyond this dedication, because the risk to look at a great person like Lejeune or other friends that I have like Chiara Corbella, Enrico Petrillo, whom I went with to the New York Encounter, is that you see these great people, you say, wow, they are really dedicated, committed, and I'm not. So this is some kind of characteristic that you are a talent that you are born with. So, well, I would like to dwell on two aspects. The first thing is that Jérôme Lejeune was privileged in a way. We are privileged in our work because he was meeting ill people, as Professor Zampino said, that well, they are persons and they are a person with a disease. So I am a geriatrist, and my school has always taught me to look at the patient as a person, not just as someone who bears a disease, because otherwise the medicine you practice is inhuman and it is not beneficial. So it is the patient that transforms Lejeune, that transforms us. These are special patients that give us an incredible gift, because they make us grow as doctors, as physicians, and as men. Because as Professor Zampino was saying before, every single man is a mix of different, enormous, great things and of very low things, of strength and fragility. And the school of our patients teaches us how to treat people. They taught us what suffering means. And as we acquire the courage to be with these patients, the more they actually help us grow as men, because we understand what suffering is. Because patients teach us that suffering also gave them something, made them lighter. So we meet our patients, and after we have met them, we have changed. So this is the first aspect that made Jerome's medical experience change him as a man. Then there is a second aspect I would like to underline that really struck me in the book that I read on the life of Lejeune, and it is the following. He was already used to being transformed. When he met his patients, he was already, ready. And I was really struck by the fact that he failed 4 times the exam of surgery. 4 times. So, once can happen, but 4 times means that he really insisted on succeeding that exam. He was a genius. He was very talented with his hands. It had all needed to become a great surgeon, but he failed the exam 4 times, so that he had to take a different path. So that's when the great Christian in Lejeune also got involved. This enabled him to abandon his own personal enterprise and to start the adventure proposed by someone else. And then this was his characteristic for his whole life. And this is really a treasure. Who would have thought that life would have led him to meet the Pope? Those 4 failures would have never given the idea that he could have a life like that. So his dedication wasn't a soft skill that he was born with. You are not born Jérôme Lejeune. You become Jérôme Lejeune, or rather, someone else makes you become Jérôme Lejeune.
Nella vita di Lejeune
In Lejeune's life, it is clear that passion for a research and his scientist's skill were based on the passion to discover the truth. As a physician and as a researcher, what makes you free in research, also because there are so many different dynamics in the scientific society at the moment? Well, I'll try to give some food for thought, also for those who are not researchers. Jérôme Lejeune, and I want to quote him. I don't find the notes anymore. Well, he talked to his colleagues, he wrote to his colleagues by saying, you need to choose either cytogenetics as we know it, or a fight against the unknown to grasp a small morsel of knowledge on which to base our possible treatment. So this is research as we know it, is in some kind of industry. There are rules, there are laws, there are methods, there are things that need to be done. So the motto of the researchers is publish or perish. So we publish all the time, we write all the time, and we have heaps of articles, and well, this is a very noble activity, but there is also an adventure, the adventure of which Lejeune speaks. We fight with the unknown, against the unknown, to try and find a treatment, a cure. So for Lejeune, there is always this aspect linked with a relationship. So he has 2 points of view, as a physician and as a researcher. So you can be a researcher because you wanted to foster your career, or you can be a researcher because you love someone, because you are close to someone. He will never give his name to other things that he discovered during his research work. But then there is also another level, which is much more interesting in his work, in his life, that is situated in a framework that is that of his time. Biology was booming at the time. Biologists had found the DNA, the miracle molecule. They use it, they read it, they study it. It is a cultural adventure. It is an enormous scientific leap. But what really strikes Lejeune, and I quote again, is how information has become part of the matter to govern it is something we ignore. So what is the DNA? Is the secret language of life, and it is a moment in science when we read the message of life. So language that enters into the matter is what surprises all the scientists at the time. And the great scientist, Lejeune, is completely dumbstruck. So this is the limit of knowledge, the veil that covers knowledge. How is it possible that language has gone into matter? So that's where Lejeune takes a step back and says, we do not know. In his mind, this language, this unknown part, means that there is something behind it. In that cultural moment, behind that wall, there is, actually destiny or mistake. But what is behind this wall? Someone who speaks or faith? This is, in a way, is what we read in Lejeune's letters. It says we need to safeguard our mind of scientists as scientists, because faced with this reality, we need to take a step back. And we have to look at the whole picture. So let's look at this mystery. This is the kind of science that he lives at that time. And it is something that is an extremely important lesson for us, something that I take home with him, I take home with me. And everything that happens behind the patients I meet, behind all events of life, what is behind human history, what is behind the time of human life? Is there someone who speaks, or is there just fate and error? So, and I conclude now. I had to think about the Christmas wishes that the Association Enzo Piccinini sent out last Christmas. And I quote, "Either man is wrong or there is an answer." Lejeune had also the adventure to find this question as a scientist studying DNA, and in this battlefield that's been developed in so many ways, euthanasia, abortion, and all our interpersonal relationships.
Grazie.
Thank you very much, Angelo. I would like to conclude this talk, even if actually it would be really beautiful to continue talking about Jerome. Precisely based on what Angelo said, it occurred to me one thing. I've grown up that was very much characterized by the presence of Enzo Piccinini. And actually, we have Chiara Corbella, Lejeune, and something came to my mind. One of the things that he said, the individual is the relationship with the infinite. The realm of heaven is myself, it's the person, the treasure. This supreme good is my life, precisely because it is a relationship with the eternal. And I think I can say, as you've probably seen, I mean, we're dealing with doctors who are very much involved in the treatment of their patients, as one can tell from what they have told us. The children we meet actually are the most transparent vehicle that helps us establish this relationship with the infinite. So we're all grateful to share the life of these children and families. I'd like to close with a video of Lejeune, a video that the Lejeune Foundation has prepared and that was used for an exhibition, an itinerant exhibition of the Rimini meeting. You who are for the family, people will make fun of you. You will be told that you are not fashionable. You will be told that you are impeding the progress of science. There will be technical and scientific tyranny waging against you, or that you're trying to apply bridles to science. Well, actually, I would like to tell you, you don't have to be afraid. It's you. It's you who will convey the words of life. What we have left is wisdom, eternal wisdom. So the wisdom that men don't have. This wisdom can be summarized in one sentence that explains everything, that answers everything, that will tell you in any moment that you, and this sentence is very, very simple. It's the mother of everyone who will have taught us what you have done to the youngest of my brothers, you will have done it to me. If you want, there is the possibility of having these little memories for the intercession of the venerable Jérôme Lejeune. Actually, we just need a miracle for the beatification. So as a postulator, I would like to call you, please pray for Lejeune every day. So maybe next year we can have Jérôme Lejeune beatified. So as you can see, the Rimini meeting is very rich. We have seen lots of talks. So you know how important this place is, the meeting is. So kindly, I'd like to kindly ask you to donate for the Rimini meeting. Another important aspect is that in this peculiar historical moment where there are several unknowns inducing us to wonder how it is possible to establish a dialogue and peace, of course, we were very much provoked by what Cardinal Pizzaballa told us at the inaugural meeting of the meeting. That's why the Rimini meeting will devolve a part of the donations collected during the week for the emergency in the Holy Land. Thank you very much to our dear guests.
Civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Qui è ora. Qui è dove conoscere significa confrontarsi con le sfide della contemporaneità, ascoltare le nuove generazioni da accogliere nel tempo presente. Ora, Università Cattolica del Sacro Cuore. Visita il sito unicat.it.
E allora si è voltato improvvisamente alla gente che era lì e ha detto: la gente che cosa dice che io sia? Chi dice che io sia? E voi chi
Qui è ora. Qui è dove conoscere significa confrontarsi con le sfide della contemporaneità, ascoltare le nuove generazioni da accogliere nel tempo presente. Ora, Università Cattolica del Sacro Cuore. Visita il sito unicat.it.
E allora si è voltato improvvisamente alla gente che era lì e ha detto: la gente che cosa dice che io sia? Chi dice che io sia? E voi chi dite che io sia?